All right. We want to welcome everybody to our interview today with Kellie Fitzgerald. Got to meet her through Facebook. I think we're in a mutual group and saw that she was publishing or just published a book about her near-death experience and struck up a conversation. And we have a near-death experience group called Near Death Experiences and More, uh, encouraging people to tell their story about their near-death experience. And so I wanted to interview Kellie and get her to share her. I'm a former pastor, so I say testimony, to share your story with us. And so thank you for being here with us. Thanks,
Well,
Kellie.
thank you for the opportunity. I love talking about this stuff. It was not always something I like to talk about, but since my experience, I think it's important that we talk about it.
Yeah, good. We talked on the phone a few weeks back and got to hear more details about the story. So I'm anxious for you to share it. So why don't we just jump right in? Tell us, give us a little bit of the background, and then walk us through your experience. And then at the end, we'll take some questions that I wrote down from the Facebook group. With their in the chat, if somebody wants to put a question in, I will try to remember to get to that as well. So go for it. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. Um, I've always been a very deeply spiritual person. So none of what I went through is exactly shocking to me. But I am the poster child for what is wrong with Western medicine. And when I have a number of autoimmune issues, one of them gives me mouth sores and cysts in this cheek, this remaining one right there. When one of the cysts, this one actually, got infected, I went to the doctor and I said, I have this infection. And they said, well, we don't really prescribe antibiotics now because we've overprescribed them. So we're going to let your body fight this off. I have 5 different autoimmune issues. Infections are a big deal for me. I went to a different doctor, same thing. Being in an incredibly remote area, I didn't have a whole lot of options for doctors. And at that time, I didn't have a vehicle. So I couldn't drive into Tucson or Phoenix. So I got sicker and sicker and sicker. And eventually, what I learned later in the hospital happened is when the cyst burst in my mouth, it went into my bloodstream and eventually infected my whole bloodstream and stopped my heart. The night that I died, I distinctly remember knowing I was going to die. If I laid down and went to sleep, I would not wake up the next morning. I have 6 dogs and 4 cats that depend on me. I live alone out here besides them. And I was looking at them and they're looking at me like, do something. So while I still don't remember calling 911, I had to have, or one of the animals is really talented. But the first ambulance showed up. I don't know why they showed up. They didn't have the experience to know what to do with someone who was actively dying. So the crew of this first ambulance that showed up had to call an ambulance. I found that hilarious. And I was laughing, and they thought I was having some sort of seizure, which scared them even more. But when the second ambulance got there, they realized what was going on. And I kept telling them I can't lay down flat. If I lay flat, I can't breathe and my heart will stop. I knew that. They argued with me. Well, for transportation laws, you have to be lying flat in the back of an ambulance. Okay, so I laid down flat, my heart stopped, they freaked. Went back, they put a pillow under my head, so just my head was elevated, so I was like this. That doesn't help you breathe. So they had their own conversation. in the ambulance. And I remember thinking, I'm going to die in an ambulance and I'm not going to be able to get out. I'm going to be stuck. My soul's going to be stuck in the back of an ambulance for all eternity. And it made me laugh. And I realized every time I would laugh at something, it would make me take a deep breath and then I would come back. And I came to the conclusion that the universe was keeping me alive by making me laugh, because otherwise I would have died in an ambulance. But they did get me to the hospital, realized that I was too critical for our little tiny country hospital, and they called a helicopter. And I did die in the helicopter. I knew that I was dead when I realized I was sitting outside the helicopter on a landing skid, enjoying the view. It was just, I'm looking at the stars, I'm looking at the mountains, I'm looking at the tiny little dots of houses, with the lights. And I realized that I was dead. I realized I was gone. And then I realized there was a being on either side of me. The second I noticed them, I was in a tunnel. I've talked to a lot of people and done a lot of interviews about my experience. What I experienced in my tunnel, I haven't heard anyone else describe. It was like plasma inside the walls. It was like moving liquid inside the walls, and it was making different artwork. That's the artist in me. It was artwork that I was looking at, and it was shifting and changing, and colors were moving. And I would have been content to stay in that tunnel forever because it was very entertaining, but it didn't last that long. And I was met in a very, very, very bright place by two of my dearest friends that preceded me in my death, um, and a whole bunch of animals. My family was not there. I didn't have a look, this is God here. I didn't have that moment. But what I had was complete and total love and oneness. And I was watching things from my life like appear on a screen that wasn't really there in front of me. And I was watching this trauma early in childhood led to this trauma a little later, led to this one, and led to this one. And I was shown how my reactions to different traumas changed as I grew. That's like the first one that probably wasn't handled as well as I should have. Then again, I was 3. What do you want? But every time I would go through something, I would learn something. And they were showing me that my life had not really all been about trauma and pain. It was more about lessons and learning. And I was shown that I did sign up for this. At various points in my life, I was like, I didn't sign up for this. They're like, yes, you did. You did. Yeah, you did. So it's more of learning how, not that you have to take responsibility, but learning how to take that responsibility. Because you do need to take the traumas and the lessons that you learned through going through those traumas, and you need to heal them and let them go. Don't hold on to that stuff. And I had held on to every little thing that anybody had ever done to me in my life. And it had all stacked up. And that's kind of why I didn't heal. That's kind of why I went the opposite direction. It felt like I was there for months. It felt like I was there forever, really. You can call it heaven, you can call it the afterlife, you can whatever, but it's not really afterlife. It's a continuation of your soul's journey. Death is an illusion. We don't stop. We continue in a different form, yeah. But one thing that I learned from that is I was watching my loved ones from the other side. I was saying, they'll be okay. They'll be okay. Oh, they'll be okay. My family would miss me. People that love me would miss me. They'll be okay. But when I got to my house and I saw my animals, I was, oh, they won't be okay. They needed me. And that was my concern, which various people have told me in various interviews that makes me a very strange person. But those animals, I do animal rescue. I rescued every one of my guys, some of them from really, really, really bad situations. So I watched these little fur beings learn to trust, learn to be happy, learn to play, learn to do all the things that a normal pet should be able to do, but they couldn't because of their situations. And that was my concern on the other side, was the people in my life would be fine. Those animals, I wasn't sure, because I knew no one I knew would be able to take all of them together. And I wasn't sure they'd learn to trust other animals again after having done so much work to blend them into a little fur family. So I was talking to angelic beings on the other side about that. That was my concern. It wasn't my grandkids, it wasn't business, it was just the animals. And the funny thing about that is I hear so many people talking about loved ones that have crossed. And I said my family didn't meet me there. And I asked why. And one of these very brilliantly bright, you cannot describe this place. It is so bright, and the energy is such love and oneness. And it was just peace, love. But there were beings there that I could ask questions to. And they made it very clear. One thing that was weird for me was realizing that angels are different colors and some don't have wings. That was a little odd to me. But yeah. But they told me, if you want to see your family, call them. And I did. And they appeared out of nowhere. Just like, boom, hi, we're here. And they looked at me like, you're not supposed to be here. What are you doing here? You know, they didn't say a word, but I got that from the way they were looking at me. And I heard someone behind me say, they're confused. Yeah, their confusion confused me. And for some reason, I said, you know what? If you are not comfortable seeing me here right now, you can go. And I was completely okay with that. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't angry. I was, oh, you're not ready to see me here. You can go. And I watched them fade. They didn't move. They faded away. And to me, that was freaky. I'm like, whoa. I played with animals, walked through beautiful gardens. My experience, and this is another thing I learned, whatever we experience in after we die is what we expect to experience. It's what we think we deserve. That's why I had the experience I had, and why my experience revolved around so many animals, because that's what my concerns were. That's where my heart lies still to this day. You know, if somebody asked me what's the most dangerous animal on the planet, and I said human beings. And that's honestly the way I feel. You know, it's not, there's no question to me. Animals have saved my life over and over and over again. When I was a little kid, I ran away from home is what I did. I got mad and ran away from home into the woods. And I got lost.
Yeah.
And my dog found me. So they've literally saved my life. But there was a voice calling me that I didn't recognize. And this is someone apparently from my future. And I was told I had to go back. I had to come back to meet that person and to do the work that I needed to be doing with that person. It was sort of a project that I apparently still don't know what it is, that is coming. And that's why I had to come back. Didn't want to. If it weren't for my animals, I would have I probably would have objected, but I knew at that point that there was a reason for me being here. And I smashed down in my body with such a force and such a pain. I, I don't recommend it. It was not a good time. And people around me, screaming my names, come back to us, kids, stay with us, stay with us. And I was just, okay, I'm back. But I was in so much pain. They put me in ICU. And the primary reason they did that is because I wouldn't stay conscious. It hurt so bad to be back in my body. I was just like, nope, not doing it. I'm floating up here for a while. And I would float up in the corner of the room of ICU, and I would look at and I would kind of laugh because, medical people are coming in and they're doing tests and they're trying to figure out why I'm not awake. And I'm like, that's not going to work. That's not going to work either. And finally, after 2 days, I did decide, okay, fine. It was like I knew my body was alive. I just didn't care. Just didn't care. So that's the near-death experience part. A whole lot else happened. It's all in this book. People have read this book and they've told me they've laughed, they've cried, they've wanted to call me and say, "Are you really okay now?" Because I have a very weird sense of humor, and a lot of things happened that shouldn't have happened. Normally in an emergency situation, people around you will band together and they will, just really try hard to make everything right and take care of things, and they step up. That didn't happen for me. So it's all in here.
Well, good. Thank you. So, what would you say? I know you said one of the lessons was, um, well, now I'm trying to remember which one it was. What would you say is the most important thing that you came back with, like
Everything is
for
love.
you? Okay.
Everything is love. There is one true religion, and it is love. And on the other side, they don't care what religion you practiced on this planet or in this life. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. Religion divides people instead of brings people together. And the real religion is love.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a powerful lesson. And it can be a hard earned, hard learned lesson as well. Did you when you were there, um, you said you sensed this kind of sense of oneness, right? And that's real hard probably to put into words because people, in fact, the whole experience I'm told is really hard to take something that's beyond what we experience here. It's like saying, I saw the color that aren't here. How do you communicate that to people? But in this, do you feel like that you were able to kind of bring some of that sense of oneness back? And how did that affect your life?
I kind of believed that before I got the confirmation, but there are no words to describe the entire experience. The sense of love, the sense of connectedness with everything. And one thing, I have always preferred animals to people, always, always, always. And one of the things that I was surprised to get confirmation about is that we are not only connected to each other as human beings, we are connected to the animals. We are connected to the plant kingdom. We are connected to everything on this planet. And that is the one thing that I'm really right now writing about. How do you teach people that? How do we teach people how important it is to not only love and accept each other, but the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and, the oceans and everything that is here on this planet we live on? And
Can
it
I?
seems to be something that people are missing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
No, I'm going to
well,
say is that I think that people who've had near-death experiences probably know that we're all interconnected. But Kellie, I found your comment, what you said about people getting what they deserve, what I mean, what happens to people who are very low opinion of themselves, who are very poor in their self-esteem, who, been emotionally abused, who think they don't deserve anything. They've actually never done anything wrong, but
Right.
you know what I mean, people, very
Yeah. Yeah.
confident people.
One of the things that I was told, even people, and I was horrifically abused as a child. And it wasn't really until I got really, really sick that I had any self-confidence. I've been writing books forever, and I never told anyone I was an author. It was just me.
Yeah,
But in my heart, I knew I had done nothing wrong. In
yeah,
my
yeah,
heart, I had known.
yeah,
And that's what it's about. It's what you believe you deserve in your heart. It's all about the content of your love. And that's really what it comes down to. And I spoke to someone who said they had gone to hell.
yeah, exactly.
And I asked, why did you think that
Yeah,
that's where you would go? And it was because they had been told their entire lives, mostly by the church, by the way,
yeah.
they were going to go to hell.
The thing is, also, though, people, I mean, some people are like psychopathic, aren't they? And basically, they got damage on their
Yeah,
brain
yeah,
somehow. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
And those people can't love, not really. Or at least, you know what I mean. They're not that good. What about them then?
Do you know what hell is?
No, I've had an near-death. I didn't go to hell,
No,
unfortunately.
no, no, no. But the way it was explained to me,
Yeah,
this life we're all living is hell.
yeah,
If you do not learn your lessons, if
yeah,
you are a really horrible villain, a mass murderer, something like that, if you do not have it within your being to love, you get a do-over. This is not you are going to be, stuck with pitchforks and flames for eternity. This is you are to learn. Everyone's soul journey is different.
yeah.
We have all lived a life where we were the murderer. We have all lived a life where we were the saint.
Yeah, I suppose what I'm thinking is some people can't. I mean, this is just an interest. This is one of my pet subjects, that some people, maybe somebody with Tourette syndrome who can't help, they just come out with this really rude stuff, but they help it because it's a syndrome that they've got.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering how they fit into all this because they can't actually help some of their conditions.
And look, let me address that real quick. I
Sure.
think there's a difference between the limitations of the physical body, limitations of genetic things, those sorts of things, and the essence of who we really are.
Yeah, yeah,
There's the essence of who we really are that is that's what's carrying over into the afterlife. But Susan, I'm gonna mute you back. But let's put all of our questions, if you don't mind, guys, in the chat, and then I'll ask them to her. So let's not Phil, don't unmute yourself. Just put the question in the chat. I've got some questions as well. I'm going to go to the chat here in just a moment and read those questions, and we will ask those terms. We'll make sure everybody gets their questions asked. So thank you for the question, Susan. And we're gonna touch some more on that before it's over with, I'm sure. So one of the other questions that somebody had was in this in this experience that you have when you're out of body, because we're so body centered, we
Right.
think that we are the body. It's in these experiences you find out that you're really not the body. You're this essence of who you are outside of that. So, as somebody asked yesterday, are there, do you have a sense of a body or like an energetic body, or is it just you're just conscious, or how does that work? And are there any, you feel love? So is that something that's just taking place within consciousness? How does that work?
It's consciousness mostly. Um, Before all of this, I also have been a paranormal investigator. And one of the things that has always cracked me up is people want to hear from a loved one that has crossed over, and they don't understand why they can't. And sometimes when they do, they freak out, and then nobody wants to scare you. Nobody that loves you wants to scare you. If you're asking them to, appear before you, that means this energetic being that has no body has to reassemble their energy into what they looked like so that you will recognize them. Takes a huge amount of energy to do that, because without a body, we are free. We are energy. We're all energy anyway, but we're contained in a body in the physical form. You can do that. Ghosts do appear. And that is what they're doing, is they're reassembling their molecules, their energy, into a form that we can recognize. But that's not the way they are all the time. And I think that gets confusing for people because, well, I just saw him. That's who he is still. No. We're always tethered to the other side. We're always tethered to source or God or the universe or whatever term you want to use. We always have an energetic cord there. And when we're out of body, we're over there. Now,
Yeah.
yeah, there are certain types of ghosts. And I met a guide over there who is still with me. In the book, I call him Father Frank. That is not who he really is, but that's to describe him to people. I had to give him a name. We are always, always, always connected to everything we've ever loved. Even if you're not sure about reincarnation, I think there's enough evidence around, if you look for it, to prove that we do, exist more than one time on this planet. There are so many things that go into who we become. It's dependent on your soul's journey. We all have a different journey. And when you are in the middle of trying to decide where you're going next, but you're still tied to loved ones here, you're kind of in a sort of a spiritual limbo for a little bit. That does get easier to handle. But I've talked to spirit through the years in my life that, give me a minute. I'm trying to figure this out. Or it's very difficult to learn how to work an energy body because your energy, you're not coalesced. You're everywhere. So I've started telling people since my experience, don't start calling, Great Aunt Edna right after she's passed. Give her some time to assimilate to what she's going through now, before you do that, because it is possible to come back and forth, but you're really taxing their energy. It is an energy. It's not right here. It's out here. And yeah, you can kind of see everything. And one of the things that they went into with me, because I asked, you can ask questions. Not all of them they will answer. I learned that too. But the one that I asked that was bothering me, what makes certain things happen to certain people? I've had a very traumatic life. I wanted to know why. I wanted to know why. Why was my life like this? And yet some of my friends had just this beautiful, wonderful, peaceful life. And that
They were
was,
lying.
yeah, they looked at me and went, because you chose this, I'm like, no. But we do choose we choose our own lives. The way it was explained to me is my soul is very, very old. And I want to stop reincarnating here. So I chose this current life that I am living to be my last as a human. Therefore, all those lessons I haven't learned since the incarnation of my soul, I'm learning in one life. And that has made it very, very difficult. And it was a really hard thing to accept that I chose this for myself. But I did. We all do. You know, how many times have you heard someone say, I don't belong to this family? That was me my whole life. I'm very, very different from all of my family. And yet we do choose who we incarnate with as well. So you can't say, well, you know, I'm in the wrong place or I was born at the wrong time or whatever, because we choose all that.
Even the parents.
Even the parents. Yeah. Siblings too. Yeah. Yeah. We choose everything we go through. That was a tough one for me to grasp. I was like, no, you know, but it's true. Yeah.
It puts a whole new spin on it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
It's
let me
like,
go.
why? You know?
um, yeah, that whole uh, it 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 can really, that perspective, if a person were to choose to accept that as a way to begin to see their lives, it 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 really puts a lot more responsibility on us
Mhm.
rather than blaming our parents and blaming all the and blaming our sister and blaming the I grew up in this town, I didn't have these opportunities. And instead it shifts us around to be able to begin to think, what am I supposed to learn in these situations? How can I grow through what this is? And that way they're not wasted, because even if that was totally wrong, like we go through our life and we don't believe that, like we chose to come here, but we chose to live like that. You know, we were living that way. It creates it creates a context for us to grow in that nothing, I don't think any other kind of perspective does, because otherwise we're living as the victim
Right.
for our whole lives.
Right.
Um, so let's transition to that from that real quickly, and I want to check our time. Okay, we're good. We've got 3 hours. We're good. um, Back to the what we experience when we get there,
Mhm.
and so so it seems like in your story and the ones that I've researched as well, that there's some people stories, it appears as if the how do I say this, the experience is tailored to what they need in that place in their life.
Right.
Like for you, your life review, it showed you the things that you needed to know to shift your life in going back, right?
Right.
Um, at other times, it feels like you're sort of, I say you and all of us, or those who have NDE experiences, are sort of participating in the creation of what's happening.
Mhm.
And so, is it one, the other, or is it a combination of the two?
It's a combination. It's a combination. The other thing that was really hard for me to wrap my head around is that we are collectively creating everything that is happening on this planet right now, too. Everything that has ever happened. It is a collective creation. We are co-creating with whatever name you want to give, you know, God. Always. We are, each and every one of us, the divine being having a human experience.
Mhm.
And that's really tough for people to get their head around. But we are all co-creators. The one thing about my life review too was that it was not explicitly said to me, But what I got from that is things that I have gone through in my life. I will spend the rest of my life helping other people who have gone through similar things, however that manifests. I'm working on a book right now that's a collaboration book between a lot of people who have been through some kind of neglect and abuse. And even though everyone has a different story, when we put all of our stories together, we can help all those other people who have gone through something similar. And that is a big part of what I'm back to do.
Yeah, I love the idea of the collective. Yeah, I remember in my own life as a pastor, as a Christian back then, this transition from praying to someone to do something for me to beginning to understand manifestation and how really similar they were,
Mhm.
but except that I started to realize, okay, I'm the one creating a whole lot of these things. And instead of asking from some other being to do it for me, and that kind of scale is probably not the right word, but that dynamic, I imagine is probably what is happening in those NDEs as well. There's your this whatever God source you want to call it, sounds like is helping to create a safe context for you. But then there's some healing that's taking place. Your NDE life review was for your own healing,
Yeah.
right? So I imagine that even those, and in fact, in the research, it shows this that, and this is to answer Susan's question, even those ones that come in and start with a negative experience, in all the research, it's showing that they eventually come out of that. You know,
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
they rescued, or they call on a God, or they see in themselves something different, and they have an aha moment. And so there is this dynamic of freedom and healing that's going to take place no matter what a person's been through.
Yeah.
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 Well, let me look at this. I see that somebody's got a question here. And let's check this out. Considering I have limited knowledge of NDEs and never heard of them for the vast bulk of my life, what should give the testimonies of all those who have reported various NDE experiences any more credence than those who've claimed to have been shown the horrors of hell or something along those lines? People like Bill Weiss or the jellyfish man, I don't know who that is. So why believe one category of anecdotes over another? Shown heaven or hell, I mean. So some people get shown heaven, some people get shown hell. How do you tell who in these experiences which one to give credence to? I think that's what he's asking.
I think everyone has their own story and their own experience. When I was in the hospital and I was talking to different doctors, they did all kind of scans on me. I was gone for a long time. They were positive I had some kind of brain problem. So I was talking with a lot of different doctors. And I had one who told me that my NDE was just the dying brain. It was just symptoms of a dying brain. And I said, that's your experience of my experience. And he looked at me and went, huh, and turned around and walked away. And it's everyone has an experience. They've also shown that even if it is something about your brain losing oxygen and dying, what your brain experiences is absolutely, or what you tell your brain is absolutely a real experience. They have shown through studying different people, some people come back from an NDE with bizarre talents they didn't have before in this life. I spoke to one man, and he wouldn't allow himself to be identified, but I spoke to him and he came back knowing how to play the piano.
Wow.
He was not a piano player previously. Is that a dying brain? You can't just say there's not one it's not one size fits all. Everyone has their own experiences. So I know that some of the people that I've spoken with who described going to hell, I know that was their experience. I know other people that saw a different type of heaven than I saw. That was their experience. We weren't there with the other people, so you can't really say that one's right, that one's wrong. I think they're all right. I think whatever someone experiences is their experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I know in my own life in doing ministry and working with people that would have experiences. There's a difference between the experience and the interpretation of the experience.
Yeah,
We can have an amazing or even a very difficult experience, but in the middle of, when we come back from that, how we're integrating it or learning from it, or what is the meaning of this experience, that's different. And
yeah,
so some people can have an NDE experience and then they can layer their interpretation on top of it. Would you say that
yeah,
can happen? Yeah.
yeah,
Um, and so, like you said, that everybody's having their experience is real. Then it's everybody has to interpret that experience in a way that's meaningful to them and in their life. And it's important to give them that opportunity because I wasn't there and you weren't there, right? I mean, for them, you were there. You were there for your experience.
right.
Um, so let's see. I see another question. My question is, as a licensed professional counselor and trauma therapist who is unconventional and finally accepting this truly, how may I be of best service to those who have had near-death experiences? Okay, great question.
Yeah. And I think the real important part is listening to people. Um, in the hospital, there was a lot of stuff going on I alluded to before that shouldn't have happened at my house. While I was dead, they were wreaking havoc. Um, but a nurse reached out to a priest in the hospital because I seemed upset. And he came in and I spoke to him at length and we had a wonderful conversation. And then he left, and then another priest came in, only to tell me that the first priest I'd had a conversation with was a ghost. He had died the year before. You know, but he had listened. I didn't care if he was a physical being at that point. I thought he was physical, but he was listening to me. And that was the big thing for me. I used to, years and years ago, also be a therapist. And one of the things that I've always been a strong advocate of is allowing people to talk. You find out all sorts of things when you just let people talk. And that's what I would say. The most important thing is to just listen to them and don't pass judgment. I've had people that told horror stories about how the therapist said this is wrong and that's wrong, and that's the last thing a counselor of any type should be doing, is saying something is wrong. You have to listen. You have to be accepting. You may not agree with it, but you do not, put someone down who is sharing their story. I think that's the big thing, is just to
Yeah.
listen.
Pointing them to uh, ions. Are you a member of ions or familiar with them?
I'm
Uh,
familiar with them. I'm
yeah,
not a member.
I'm not either, but and I'm trying to remember now what it stands for. But it's a like an international group for near-death experiencers, and so pointing them to resources, I would think would be a good one as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Trying to give them a, a community, point them to a community of other NDEers that who have had similar experiences, so that they're not feeling isolated. I think that would be good as well.
It's very traumatic. The entire experience is very traumatic, and everyone handles trauma in their own way. Bug. Um, but I really nobody should feel alone because this happens so often.
Yeah.
It's happening more and more, or people are talking about it more and more. And I think that's the big thing, is we need to make it okay for people to talk about it.
Yeah, it's a pretty big percentage of people in the world that have near-death experiences. I forgot what my numbers are on the book that I'm working on, but you're talking tens of thousands every year, not just like a few isolated people here and there. There are a lot of people who are being dismissed by doctors. Um, they're being dismissed by their family, did friends. And so they kind of, some people don't report their NDEs to another person for decades because they are afraid that people are gonna think they're crazy. And yet the experiences are really prolific that are happening across the world.
Very, very real.
Yeah. Does How did your transition when you came back? Of course, the into your body. A lot of people say that abrupt, just
Art.
coming back into it's not good.
No.
um, how did you process that? Like, how did you come to grips with it over the next? And did it change your views of anything over the next, say, 6 months or so?
It changed my views of a lot, mostly because of what I came back to. But it was I, knowing that I chose everything, and that I orchestrated my whole life, and everything I went through changed the way I looked at it. Instead of saying, "Oh no, something else is happening," or wait for the next shoe to drop, or I would constantly be playing the victim. Well, I guess this is going to happen next. Um, I shifted to, well, okay, what am I supposed to be learning here? And that made all the difference. I came home to just, but still, even that, I was able to say, okay, perhaps I trusted the wrong person to do things, or maybe I should have looked at, is this person qualified to do this? Those kinds of things. But when you shift your mindset from victim to, what am I supposed to be learning? What can I learn? What positive can I take from this situation? It changes your whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, it really changes your whole life.
Did did you did you realize that did you know what a near death experience was like? Did you know what this was, or did you have to like figure out I died, or was this a dream, or
I I knew I died because I sort of became a celebrity patient in the hospital, with people repeatedly coming into my room and saying, "I just wanted to see you. You died. You died. None of us thought you were going to make it, and you're here." And I heard that so often, so quickly after I came back to consciousness, that it was like, okay, I died. That was cool, because it was very real. And I said one time, and I don't say it too often anymore because it freaked people out, the other side for me was more real than this life is. It had a sense of, this is who I am. This is who we are collectively. This is how we are. This is our source. And to me, that was so much more real than what I do, day to day. It just, it's really hard to explain. And I got a lot of hate mail for saying that for some reason. But it's true. It was very, very real. So I've had lucid dreams where, in the middle of the dream you're dreaming, and that kind of feels real. Nothing compares to this. I knew I was there. I knew it had happened. Coming back was the part I had trouble believing. It's like, no, I'm not here again. But yeah, it was more shocking to other people than it was to me. I was kind of like, yeah, that happened. Okay, next. What am I doing with this? How many people can I help with my information? And I was in the hospital writing and working on, well, this book, but also the next one. Because what I realized is some of the things that I had learned, some of the truths that I was told, wouldn't fit into my experience of the NDE. They require something more substantial. So I'm working on that now. But yeah,
And
it's real.
and that phrase, more real than real, is used over and over again in the
Yeah,
NDE community. Yeah.
it is. I mean, it's astonishing how fake our lives are. Really, it's just this isn't real. But yeah,
Like this is the dream, and
yeah,
that's waking up, right?
yep, yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Or was it so did it feel familiar to you there? Like
Yeah.
I've been here
Well, a lot.
before.
Yeah, I had not exactly. I died on an operating table back in 1989 for that quick. And I had a very, very, very short and concise afterlife there. And they were like, nope, go back. Um, and I went to a totally different place. It was more in line with my life at that time.
Right.
So this was my life now. This was dozens of animals came running, dozens that I have loved through my life. And I knew every one of them and I remembered them in detail. And clearly they all remembered me. And that is more my life as an adult rather than being young like I was when I died on an operating table. I've had more emergency surgeries than any one person should have in any one life. And now knowing that I chose that is like, really? Why? What was in that Kool-Aid? It just made no sense to me. It makes more sense to me now. But I
Did
certainly created a lot. Yeah.
and would you, and you don't have to answer this question if it's the wrong kind of question, but just to give people a sense of comparison, was there any like drug use that you had when you were younger that you can say, hey, this is
No,
more real than any drug that I ever did, or something like
no, I was the outcast who never did anything.
that?
People used to assume I was Mormon because I didn't drink and I didn't smoke cigarettes and I didn't do anything. I was just very, very into yoga, Eastern philosophy. I was a very strange child, but that was where I found peace. And I think a lot of people use drugs and alcohol to find peace or to try to find something that feels better than what they're living. And I just turned in a different direction.
Yeah.
I was that very strange kid in high school that went out into the courtyard and did yoga and meditated every morning. And eventually that went into Tai Chi and trying to teach football players Tai Chi. And that just didn't work at all. So I was always the weirdo. That just never appealed to me.
All right, let's see if there's any more questions. I think we've got about maybe 10 minutes left. Um, Linda said, thank you. I'm definitely someone who listens. She said, I appreciate you sharing. I worked in an ER for nearly 4 years. I was not prepared for that trauma. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
One of the things that I later learned is that one of the medical people on the helicopter was a good friend of one of my friends. And he was not going to give up on me. And when I came back and he would come to visit me, he would say, I was not going to put myself in a position to tell Kathy that you died. I was not going to do it, not going to do it. And I feel like his dedication really did help. He really did keep me going. But yeah, my friend.
especially compared to the ones who came to get you in the ambulance to begin with, right?
Right, right. Yeah, he was just, I'm not going to be the one to tell her I'm not going to do it. So that was his reason. And it really, I know he saved my life. I know he did. He kept me going long enough to get me to the ER. But yeah, the ER nurses were freaking out and nobody knew what to do. Um, Apparently there was a little kid in the ER at the same time. And I felt very guilty later when I found out that he had to wait because they were focused on making me live. Um, I still feel bad about that. That wasn't right, but that's what they did.
Interesting. Would and I know I'm bouncing around, and sometimes these uh, questions are back and forth, but just based on some of these chats here, uh, would you say that there really isn't a heaven and hell, like as if there's these two extreme places, that instead it's a more like a dimension
Yeah,
where we have these where this is taking place?
yeah, yeah. It's definitely different dimensions, and there's a bunch of dimensions that we don't realize exist. Um, Dimensions are something that a lot of people are not yet either familiar with or comfortable with. And I think that's where we have a little bit more work to do with talking about things. One thing that we haven't touched on here, but I've been asked quite a bit, is the power of prayer, the power of sending energy to people. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold. It's important. I know how miraculous me even being here right now is. And I know how many people in my community sent prayers, sent energy. I had Reiki masters around the world sending Reiki to me. And I know that stuff works. And I know I felt it. I felt it when I was on the other side. I felt it when I came back. And when I was there, I asked an angel, what is this? I get that all love, the totally, you cannot even begin to describe it, love. And I get that. But what is this? Because underneath that, there was something else. And they said those are the well wishes of people who care about you.
Mm.
And that was huge. I've never been a fan of humanity. When I was a very small child, I decided I wanted to be a goat. And for days, I went around on all fours playing with the goats until one had butted me and I quickly came to my senses. But to have that have happened was extraordinary to me. And even though I do still prefer animals, I do realize that I have been myself very quick to judge people and their thoughts and their feelings. And that's not the right way to be. So that was another lesson that I learned, is that people, at least a lot of people, do grasp the concept that we are all energy and we are all connected. And whatever happens to one of us, in some capacity happens to each of us.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that humanity is about to learn about the animal kingdom, because what happens to them is going to happen to us too.
That's a good point. I love there's as a former Christian, as a former pastor, one of the things I saw as I sort of deconstructed my beliefs and so forth was that other people who were on that same journey sort of would throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like I've got some friends who, because Christianity and prayer went together. If in their mind Christianity is not true, therefore let's throw the whole thing out. Prayer was a waste of time. It didn't really do anything. But there's been a lot of really interesting studies where they'd take a group of people who were sick and two groups of people, and then they would have one group pray for them, and then the other group nobody prayed for. And as a result, they could see the difference in how fast one group recovered versus the other. And
Yeah.
people, some people say, well, see, I told you prayer worked. My religion's prayer worked. The thing is, that group of people that were praying were Buddhists and Jews and Christians
Mhm.
and so forth. And so it wasn't even one religion. It was what's underneath there. It's that universal spirituality and that energy that was making the difference in that person's, in those people's lives. So it's a powerful truth that I still am having to refigure
Yeah.
out, navigate. Um, Last question, and we'll go unless you've got more after this. And that is, you mentioned you saw an angelic being, and you mentioned several different ones. Um, what is that about? What are they? Um, why were they there? What is their purpose?
Angels are multidimensional beings, typically from the seventh or ninth dimensions. That is what I was told. There are different species of angels. Some people have started calling them sort of an extraterrestrial, but they are not extraterrestrial. They are multidimensional, and there is a big difference with that. Um, it's not associated with planets. It's associated with a dimension. They are always with us. Yesterday, I did a YouTube video on my channel about angels working with animals and how sometimes animals are angels. We all have a guardian angel. You can call them angels. You can call them multidimensional beings. It doesn't really, they don't care. You know, they are different. Their whole purpose is to help humanity. That's why they were created. That is what they are all about. But they also work with the planet as a whole. They work with different energies. The Schumann resonance can be, manipulated by angels or archangels. Archangels are just a different species. They're a different dimension, with a little bit more strength to work directly with humanity. But there are all sorts of angels. Um, they do all sorts of different things.
So what you
Sometimes,
saw? Oh, I'm sorry.
no, sometimes they will not intercede. Sometimes they'll just watch, say, wonder what she's going to do now, but eventually, if they do see you're going down a wrong turn, they can intercede. They usually don't, because we have free will.
So, and the ones that you saw, the beings that you saw in your experience, what were they, or what were they there for you? Did
To
they already know you, and like there was already a relationship? You think like this was
Yeah,
a guardian angels, or
yeah. I had the ones on the helicopter skid. Their whole purpose was to get me safely through this transition. Um, they guide everyone, whether you see them or not. A lot of people don't see them, but they're still there. There are many things that are around us all the time that we don't see. Um, on the other side, I encountered some light blue angels without wings, and I'm like, that's different, from a different dimension, slightly different purpose. Some of them are to ease the trauma of death. Some of them are to, in my case, ease the trauma of returning. Uh, they all have different
which is
jobs.
probably more traumatic.
Yeah, oh, much. Um, but there are angels that work specifically with different situations. They will work with one continent. They have jobs. They're not just free floating. I'll help anybody with anything. They do have their own, jobs that they call it the directive. They have their own directions, their own directive. This is what I'm supposed to do. There is a hierarchy of angels, which kind of surprised me. I'm like, oh, wait, what? So they're their own civilization. They have their own place to be. I never thought of angels as having a job, but they all do. But they are a different dimension than we are. So that's why they are able to come and go, and we can't go to them. They come to us.
Good. Anything that you would like to leave with everyone? Obviously, I want to encourage everybody to get your book. Hold that up real quick again, so they can see it. It's called Yes, I Died, but I'm Totally Fine Now.
Yeah,
And
that's what I
so,
would tell people. That is exactly what I would tell people. I live in a tiny little community, and everybody knows everyone. So when that helicopter took me away, there was a crowd gathering. They were all out, and people would say, I heard you died. Yeah, I died. I'm totally fine now. And so when I came to write the book, I was stuck on a title. And my best friend said, yes, I died, but I'm totally fine now. I cannot believe you didn't already think of that. So that was her deal.
all right. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for taking time for us today, for interacting with the questions. We appreciate all the people who participated. Let me check, be sure I'm not missing anything super important here that I think I covered it all. There's lots of thanks to you in the chat.
Well,
We
thanks for the
appreciate
opportunity.
you, and
I really enjoyed it. You guys are great.
thank you. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. And thanks to our folks who showed up. And we will have this posted for too long in the Near Death Experience Facebook group. And Kelly will also, I'm gonna send her the file and she's gonna get it either, she's gonna do something with it.
I'll put it on my
So
YouTube channel.
there we
Please
go.
get
All right.
yours.
Thank you guys and appreciate
Thanks.
everybody. See ya. Bye bye.